My name is Grace Ruby, and I'm going to tell you something that will make you question everything you think you know about reality, about consciousness, and about the invisible threads that connect us across time and death itself. For as long as I can remember, there's been a voice in my head. Not my own voice. Not the usual internal monologue we all have. This voice is different, deeper, older, and unmistakably male. His name is Lucius Raziel, though I didn't learn that until much later. For most of my life he was just the voice, my secret, my companion, my guardian, and my curse. I was 6 years old when I first remember hearing him clearly. It was a Tuesday afternoon in September. I remember because the leaves were just starting to turn orange outside my bedroom window in our small house in Portland, Oregon. My mother, Caroline Ruby, was downstairs making dinner, probably her famous lasagna, the smell of garlic and tomato sauce drifting up through the floorboards. I was sitting on my bed playing with my dolls when I heard it. "Don't go outside tonight, little one." The voice was so clear, so present, that I actually looked around my room expecting to see someone standing there. But I was alone. The door was closed. My toy chest sat in the corner, my bookshelf against the wall, my nightlight shaped like a crescent moon waiting to be plugged in. "Who said that?" I whispered into the empty room. Silence. I went back to my dolls, convincing myself I'd imagined it. But as dinner time approached and my mother called me downstairs, the voice came again, more urgent this time. "Grace, do not go outside tonight. Please." This time I listened. When my mother suggested we eat on the back porch to enjoy the last warm evening of the season, I threw a tantrum. I screamed, cried. I refused to leave the house. My mother was baffled. I was normally such a calm child, so easygoing. She gave in and we ate inside. The next morning we found out that a drunk driver had crashed through the Hendersons' fence 3 houses down, right around the time we would have been sitting on our porch. Mrs. Henderson had been in her garden and barely escaped with her life. I never told my mother about the voice. Over the years, he saved me more times than I can count. When I was 8, he told me to take a different route home from school. I later found out that a man had been arrested for attempting to abduct a child on my usual path that very day. When I was 12, he warned me not to get in the car with my friend Melissa's older brother, who I later learned had been drinking. The voice wasn't always about danger, though. Sometimes he just talked to me. On lonely nights, when I felt like the world was too big and I was too small, he'd tell me stories. Stories about ancient cities with spires that touched the clouds. About battles fought under crimson moons. About a world that existed long before mine, painted in shades of shadow and starlight. "Who are you?" I'd ask him, lying in my bed in the dark. "Someone who cares about you," he'd always reply. "Someone who has been waiting a very long time." Waiting for what? For you to find me. I didn't understand what that meant. But his voice became my constant companion, my secret friend, the one person or whatever he was who truly knew me. By the time I was 16, I'd convinced myself I was either psychic or insane. I'd read every book I could find on telepathy, clairvoyance, spirit guides, and mental illness. I'd scoured the internet for stories of people who heard voices, looking for someone, anyone, who experienced what I did. Some nights, I'd sit at my desk with my laptop open, the glow illuminating my face in the darkness, and I'd type into search engines. Hearing a protective voice in your head, telepathic connection with unknown entity, voice that predicts danger. The results were always the same. Schizophrenia forums, religious websites about guardian angels, New Age blogs about spirit guides. None of it felt right. "You won't find me in those places," Lucius said one night as I scrolled through yet another forum. I'd started calling him Lucius by then. He'd finally told me his name on my 15th birthday like a gift. "Then where will I find you?" I asked aloud. I'd stopped worrying about people thinking I was crazy. I lived alone in my college dorm room by then, having graduated high school early. My mother had passed away from cancer 2 years prior, and I had no siblings, no close family. It was just me and him. "Come to Europe," he said. "Come to Romania." Romania. The word sent a shiver down my spine. Why Romania? Because that's where I am, he said simply. That's where I've been for 500 years. Waiting. Waiting for me. Asked my heart pounding. That's impossible. I'm 19 years old. You can't have been waiting for me for 500 years. Can't I? His voice held a hint of amusement. You still don't understand what you are, Grace. What we are to each other. Then explain it to me, I demanded. I can't, he said, and for the first time since I'd known him, I heard something in his voice I'd never heard before. Sadness. Deep ancient sadness. The explanation won't make sense until you see me. Until you understand. Are you a ghost? Yes. A spirit. Am I channeling you somehow? No, he said. I'm not dead, Grace. Not exactly. Suspended. Caught between one state and another. Waiting for the one soul in all the world who can wake me. And you think that's me? I know it is. It took me 2 years to save enough money to go to Romania. 2 years of working double shifts at a local bookstore, of eating ramen noodles and skipping meals, of denying myself every luxury. Every night Lucius would talk to me. He'd describe the castle where he waited, Castello Raziel, deep in the Carpathian Mountains. He'd tell me about the village nearby, a place called St. George, where the locals still spoke in whispers of the old lords who once ruled the land. They think I'm a legend, he told me. A monster from their grandparents' stories. They're not entirely wrong. What are you? I asked him for the 1000th time. You'll see soon enough, he always replied. By the time I was 21, I had enough money. I bought a plane ticket to Bucharest, then arranged for a rental car to drive into the mountains. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Who would I tell? I had no family, and my few friends from college would think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. The flight from Portland to Bucharest took forever. Layovers in New York and Munich, hours of sitting in uncomfortable airport chairs, drinking bad coffee and trying not to think about the fact that I was flying across the world to find a voice in my head. But Lucius was with me the whole time. I can feel you getting closer, he said as my plane descended into Bucharest. For the first time in centuries, I can feel warmth. Hope. What if this is all in my head? I whispered, looking out the window at the city lights below. What if I get there and there's nothing? No castle, no you. What if I've been hallucinating for my entire life? Then you'll go home, he said gently. And I'll have at least had the comfort of your voice, even if we never meet. But Grace, you're not hallucinating. I promise you that. I landed in Bucharest on a grey October morning. The city was beautiful in a melancholy way. Soviet-era buildings mixing with ornate older architecture, tree-lined boulevards, and the constant hum of traffic. I picked up my rental car, a small Dacia that rattled ominously when I started the engine, and began the drive north into the mountains. The landscape changed as I drove. The urban sprawl of Bucharest gave way to small towns, then villages, then just forest. Dense, ancient forest that seemed to swallow the road whole. The GPS on my phone lost signal after the first hour, but Lucius guided me. Turn left at the old oak, he'd say. Follow the river. You'll see a stone marker, go right. I followed his directions blindly, trusting in the voice that had never steered me wrong. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange, I saw it. Castello Raziel. It rose from the mountainside like something out of a Gothic novel. All dark stone and pointed towers, windows like empty eyes staring out at the valley below. Should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. I'm here, I whispered. I know, Lucius said, and his voice was thick with emotion. I can feel you. After so long, I can finally feel you near me. I parked the car at the base of the castle and got out, my legs shaky from the long drive. The air was cold and smelled of pine and earth. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The castle's entrance was a massive wooden door, weathered by centuries but still intact. There was no lock, no handle. I pushed, and it swung open with a groan that echoed through the empty halls within. Follow the main corridor, Lucius instructed. Down the stairs. To the crypt beneath. The crypt. Of course it would be a crypt. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The castle interior was exactly as Lucius had described it. Stone walls covered in faded tapestries, suits of armor standing sentinel in alcoves, portraits of stern-looking nobles with eyes that seemed to follow me as I walked. I found the stairs leading down, a spiral of stone that descended into darkness. The air grew colder with each step, and I could see my breath forming clouds in front of me. At the bottom I found myself in a large chamber. The walls were lined with stone sarcophagi, each carved with intricate designs. And in the center of the room, on a raised platform, was a single ornate coffin. It was made of black marble, inlaid with silver in patterns that seemed to shift in my flashlight's beam. Symbols I didn't recognize. Words in a language I couldn't read. "Open it," Lucius said softly. My hands trembled as I approached. The lid was heavy, but it moved when I pushed. Inside, lying on white silk that should have been rotted but looked pristine, was a man. He was beautiful. There's no other word for it. Beautiful in a way that made my breath catch, that made me forget where I was or why I'd come. His skin was pale as moonlight, his hair black as raven's wings, falling to his shoulders. He wore dark clothing from another era, a black coat with silver buttons, a white shirt, dark trousers. And he was perfectly still, not breathing, not moving, like a statue carved from marble. But his face was the face I'd imagined 1,000 times when I heard his voice. Strong features, a firm jaw, lips that looked like they should be smiling but weren't. And even with his eyes closed, I knew they would be gray. "Storm gray." "Lucius," I whispered. "Yes," his voice came, surrounding me. "This is me. This is what I am." "You're a vampire," I breathed. It wasn't a question. "Yes. But you're not. You're not awake. You're catatonic," he finished. "I've been in this state for 500 years. Unable to move, unable to wake, but still conscious. Still aware. Trapped in my own mind, in darkness, for half a millennium. The horror of it hit me like a physical blow. That's torture. That's hell." "Yes," he agreed quietly. "It was meant to be. It was my punishment." "Punishment for what?" "For loving someone I shouldn't have. For breaking laws that were ancient even when I was young. For trying to change what I was." I reached out, my hand hovering over his face. "What happened to you?" Lucius's voice filled the crypt, telling me a story that spanned centuries. He was born in 1480, in what was then Wallachia, to a noble family. He was turned into a vampire at the age of 28 by a vampire named Mordecai Thornheart, an ancient creature who ruled over the vampire covens of Eastern Europe with an iron fist. For years, Lucius lived as vampires did, hunting, feeding, existing in the shadows. But he was never comfortable with it. He never accepted the violence, the predation, the endless night. In 1523, he met a human woman named Elena Brightsoul. She was a healer in a small village, known for her kindness and her courage. Against every law of his kind, Lucius fell in love with her. They kept their relationship secret for a year. Lucius would visit her at night, and they would talk for hours. He told her what he was, and instead of fear, she showed him compassion. She believed he could be more than what he'd been made. Together, they searched for a way to break the vampire curse, to return Lucius to humanity. They found ancient texts, consulted with witches, performed rituals under full moons. And they succeeded. Almost. They found a spell that could transform a vampire back into a human, but it required 3 things. The vampire's willing participation, the blood of their true love given freely, and a binding curse that would tie their souls together across lifetimes. Lucius and Elena performed the ritual. But Mordecai discovered them before it could complete. Mordecai saw what we were trying to do as the ultimate betrayal, Lucius explained, his voice heavy with old pain. To reject the gift of vampirism, to try to become human again, it was heresy. He killed Elena in front of me, tore her throat out while I watched. I gasped, tears springing to my eyes. And then he cursed me, Lucius continued. He couldn't kill me, the ritual had already begun, and it protected me from final death. But he could trap me in this state. Catatonic. Aware but unable to move, unable to speak, unable to die. He sealed me in this coffin and left me here to suffer for eternity. But you can speak, I said. You spoke to me. You've been guiding me my whole life. Because of you, Grace, he said softly. Because the ritual that Elena and I began wasn't entirely stopped. It changed me, altered my consciousness in ways Mordecai didn't understand. And it created a bond, a connection that would reach across death itself. Elena, I whispered, understanding flooding through me. I'm Elena's reincarnation. Yes, her soul was reborn, again and again across the centuries. And each time I could feel her, feel you out there in the world. But it wasn't until you were born that the connection was strong enough for me to reach you, to speak to you. I sank down onto the edge of his coffin, my mind reeling. This is insane. This is completely insane. I know, he said. Believe me, I know. If there had been any other way, any other option, I would have taken it. But Grace, you're the only one who can wake me. The ritual that Elena and I began can only be completed by her soul, by you. How? Yes. How do I wake you? The same way the ritual required before. Your blood given freely. And a declaration of true love. I stared at his still face, at this impossibly beautiful man who'd been my companion for my entire life, who'd saved me countless times, who'd suffered alone in darkness for 5 centuries. I don't know if I love you, I said honestly. I don't even know you. Not really. I know your voice, but I know, he interrupted gently. And I would never ask you to lie. Never ask you to give something you don't feel. I've waited 500 years. If I must wait longer, I will. I spent the night in the castle, in a room on the upper floor that was surprisingly well preserved. I found a bed with clean linens, though who had maintained them I couldn't imagine, and I lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling. Lucius was quiet, giving me space to think. The situation was impossible. Insane. I was supposed to believe that I was the reincarnation of a medieval healer, that the voice in my head belonged to a cursed vampire, that I held the power to wake him with my blood and a declaration of love. It was the stuff of fantasy novels, fever dreams. And yet, I thought about every moment of my life when Lucius had been there. Every danger he'd steered me away from. Every lonely night when his stories had comforted me. Every time I'd felt lost and his voice had guided me home. I thought about the feeling I'd had when I first saw the castle, like coming home. I thought about his face, so still and beautiful in the coffin below. Lucius, I said into the darkness. Yes. Tell me about Elena. Not the ritual, not the curse. Tell me about her. Who she was. What you loved about her. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak. He told me about Elena's laugh, how it sounded like bells. About how she would hum while she worked, making poultices and tinctures for the sick. About her stubborn refusal to see anyone as irredeemable, even a vampire. He told me about their first kiss, under a willow tree by a stream. About how she would read to him from books of poetry. About how she'd touch his face and tell him she could see his soul, and it was beautiful. He told me about the night she died, how her last words were, "I'll find you again. I promise." As he spoke, something strange happened. Memories that weren't mine flickered through my mind. A willow tree. Stream. The smell of herbs drying in a cottage. Strong hands holding mine. Were they Elena's memories? Or just my imagination, filling in the gaps? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to leave Lucius in that coffin. I wasn't going to let him suffer alone in darkness for another 500 years. Maybe it wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something. Compassion, connection, a bond that had stretched across my entire life. It was enough. The next morning I returned to the crypt. In the daylight filtering through a crack in the stone ceiling, Lucius looked even more unreal. Too perfect to be human. Too still to be alive. I stood beside his coffin, my heart pounding. "Are you sure about this?" Lucius asked, and I could hear the hope and fear warring in his voice. "No," I said honestly. "I'm not sure about anything. But I'm doing it anyway." I pulled out the small knife I'd brought from the castle kitchen. My hand shook as I held it over my palm. "Your blood given freely," Lucius recited. "And words of true feeling. It doesn't have to be love, Grace. Not romantic love. Just truth. Just honesty about what you feel." I pressed the blade to my palm and drew it across. Blood welled up, bright red against my pale skin. I held my hand over Lucius's lips, letting drops of blood fall onto them. "I don't know if I love you," I said, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "I don't know if what I feel is Elena's love or mine or something new entirely. But I know that you've been with me my whole life. I know that you've protected me, guided me, comforted me. I know that when I look at you I feel something, recognition, connection, belonging. I know that I don't want you to suffer anymore. I know that I want to meet you, truly meet you. I want to know you not as a voice in my head, but as a person. I want to see your eyes open. I want to hear your voice with my ears instead of my mind. I stopped, tears running down my face. "I want you to be free." For a moment nothing happened. Then Lucius gasped. It was a sound I felt in my bones, the first breath after 500 years of stillness. His chest rose and fell. Color flooded into his pale cheeks. And his eyes, those storm-gray eyes I'd imagined so many times, opened. He looked at me, really looked at me, and smiled. "Grace," he whispered, and hearing his voice out loud, not in my head, was like hearing music for the first time. "My Grace. My Elena. You found me." He sat up slowly, as if remembering how to move. His hand reached for mine, the one still bleeding, and he wrapped his fingers around it gently. "I can feel," he said in wonder. "I can move. I can." He stopped, looking at me with an expression of such joy and relief that it made my heart ache. "Thank you. Thank you." I laughed, half crying. "You're welcome. I think." He stood still holding my hand, and the world seemed to shift. The bond between us, which had always been in my head, suddenly felt physical, real. A golden thread connecting my heart to his. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," he said, "we discover who we are to each other. Not who we were 500 years ago, but who we are now. You're not Elena, not entirely. And I'm not the same vampire I was. Or something new. Something that's never existed before." "That sounds complicated." "It will be," he agreed. "There are things we need to figure out. I'm still a vampire. The ritual didn't complete, so I wasn't turned human. You're still mortal. There's Mordecai to worry about if he still lives. And there's the rest of your life to consider. Your dreams, your plans, your future." "But," I prompted, seeing the hope in his eyes. "But we have time," he said. "For the first time in 5 centuries I have time. And I want to spend it with you if you'll let me. Getting to know you. Letting you know me. No pressure, no expectations. Just possibility." I looked at our joined hands, at the blood that marked us both, at the face I'd dreamed about for years. "Okay," I said. "Let's try." I'm writing this from a cafe in Bucharest. It's spring now, and the trees are in bloom, white petals drifting through the air like snow. Lucius is across from me, reading a book and drinking coffee. Yes, vampires can consume some human food and drink, though it doesn't nourish him. He just likes the taste, and he's making up for 500 years of missing out. People glance at him as they pass. He's the kind of beautiful that makes people do double takes, that makes waitresses stammer and men straighten their shoulders. But he doesn't notice. His attention is on his book and occasionally on me. Things aren't perfect. We argue sometimes, About big things like what our future looks like and small things like his tendency to be overprotective. I'm still figuring out who I am, separate from Elena's shadow. He's still learning how to exist in a modern world, how to be something other than a cursed vampire in a coffin. But we're trying. I've decided to stay in Romania for a while. I'm taking online classes, working toward a degree in history. Lucius is a tremendous help with that living history textbook that he is. I'm writing, too. Stories about the things we've experienced, the things he's told me about the old world. And sometimes late at night I ask him to tell me about Elena. Not because I'm jealous, but because she's part of our story, part of who we are. Do you ever wish she was here instead of me? I asked him once, lying in bed in the small apartment we share in Bucharest. No, he said without hesitation. I loved Elena with everything I had. But you're not her replacement, Grace. You're not second best. You're her and you're you, and I love both. I love who you were and who you are and who you're becoming. That's very romantic, I teased, trying to cover the emotion his words stirred in me. I've had 500 years to think about what I'd say to you if I ever got the chance, he said, pulling me close. I'm not wasting it. The voice in my head, my constant companion, my guardian, my guide, is different now. I still hear Lucius sometimes in my thoughts through our bond. But now I also have him here, solid and real. And that's better than any voice in my head could ever be. People ask me sometimes, when they hear our story, or the very edited version of it that doesn't include vampires and curses, how did you know he was real? How did you trust that the voice wasn't just in your head? And I tell them the truth. I didn't know. Not for certain. I just had faith. Faith that the voice that had been with me my whole life, that had saved me and comforted me and told me stories in the dark, was real. Faith that if I took the leap, I'd find what I was looking for. And I did. His name is Lucius Raziel. He's been dead, or near enough to it, for 500 years. He's a vampire, a cursed nobleman, a man out of time. And he's mine. Just as I, Grace Ruby, girl from Portland, college student, believer in impossible things, am his. We're still figuring out what that means, what our future holds. But we're doing it together.